Welcome into Steelers Talk. I'm your host, Jack Sperry. We officially have our new head coach in the city of Pittsburgh, my friends, as it is Mike McCarthy, the 18-year head coaching veteran, 62 years old, by far the oldest head coaching hiring in the history of the Pittsburgh Steelers in the Super Bowl era. It's also the first time the Steelers are hiring an offensive-minded head coach in the history of this football team. And we're going to be reacting to it right here on Steelers Talk. I just got the news here at home. It's technically my day off, just like everywhere else in the country. You know, the weather is not cooperating, but we are going to be going in studio for a breaking news live show. So if you guys want to join us for that, make sure you guys click that subscribe button and then join us. We're going to be trying to get live around 3 p.m. Eastern. Or around 3 p.m. Eastern here. So make sure you guys click that subscribe button. But I just wanted to get in front of a camera here to get my instant reaction to the news before we go live. And obviously, you know, lots of history being made with this hire with Mike McCarthy. Not only do I feel good for Mike as just on a human level because, you know, he grew up in the city of Pittsburgh. He grew up a diehard Steelers fan. This is his dream job to coach the Pittsburgh Steelers. So you got to feel great for Mike McCarthy first off. Also he worked with Omar Khan and Andy Weidel back in the early 2000s in New Orleans. So clearly that connection there made a difference in this decision by the Pittsburgh Steelers. And then also he has a connection to Aaron Rodgers, who the Steelers players reportedly have been really pushing hard to bring back for the 2026 season, and bringing in Mike McCarthy certainly increases the chances of Rodgers coming back for another season. It also indicates that the Steelers are going to continue to try and probably move forward, trying to compete, in the short term. I think if anybody was expecting this team to completely, rebuild and tear things down and, embrace, a rebuild or anything like that, I think, that wasn't something that was going to happen. I look at a guy like Art Rooney, and he's always going to be somebody that wants to win. And, that's kind of where I think that this decision kind of came down. Now, personally, I probably would have liked to go in a younger direction. I probably would have liked to go with a Chris Shula or an Anthony Weaver, or even Brian Flores. I would have preferred over Mike McCarthy, but I think that this hire makes sense for some reasons here with what the Steelers are going to be trying to do, and that's what I want to talk about here on today's show. And talk about the reasons why they ended up hiring Mike McCarthy, and why this might not end up being as bad of a hire as I think a lot of Steelers fans are going to think initially, because I know, man, I understand it. Like, a lot of us wanted younger, a lot of us wanted, somebody that could come in and modernize this organization. I know there's a lot of people out there that were very high on the idea of hiring Chris Shula and bringing in Nate Scheelhaase as the next OC. At this point, obviously, that's not going to be happening. Maybe they can still bring in Scheelhaase as OC. That's still a possibility, but I think they're bringing in McCarthy to run the offense, essentially. And I'm not sure if Scheelhaase wants to, run a McCarthy-style offense. So I think that dream for a lot of Steelers fans of Chris Shula and Nate Scheelhaase running the Steelers is probably dead at this point. But I think that there are a couple of very distinct reasons why the Pittsburgh Steelers made this hire. The first reason is Mike McCarthy is and has been a consistent winner throughout his 18-year head coaching career. He's made the playoffs in 12 of his 18 seasons. So that's 2 out of every 3 seasons he's making the postseason. And obviously, I think with fans, the main thing is, what have you done in the playoffs, specifically recently? And, that was a big part of the narrative with Mike McCarthy in Dallas was, they didn't win in the playoffs, with Mike McCarthy very much there in Dallas when it came to the postseason. And, Mike hasn't, won multiple playoff games in a playoff run in a very, very long time. But I do think Mike is very well respected in the National Football League circles because I think NFL people really respect people that can have consistent success in the regular season. And the reason why I think that is because people that work in the NFL understand how hard it is to win consistently. Mike McCarthy has been able to provide that, and that is something that we know for a fact Art Rooney II cherishes in this organization. Consistency, stability, and that is certainly something that Mike McCarthy brings to the table as a leader. He's going to be able to build a pretty decent staff, I think. He's a well-liked person in the league, and he's got a lot of connections. He's been in the league for a long time. So I think that's another thing, is that he should be able to build a pretty good staff. Obviously that's important, especially on the defensive side of the ball. I'll talk about that here in a second, because I think the defensive coordinator hire is going to be massive in terms of how I feel about this new regime coming in here to Pittsburgh. But another reason why, the Steelers probably really wanted to bring in McCarthy, and why this, in one sense makes a lot of sense, is the players and the organization seem to really want Aaron Rodgers to come back for another season. And they feel like, if you bring back Kenny G, and, you still have Muth in Washington, you still got Jalen Warren, you got DK Metcalf, and then you add a couple more, good receivers this offseason. This is an offense that can take another step forward next year. They feel like Aaron Rodgers is the right guy to lead this team into next season, and that this team can have a chance with a first-year head coach in Mike McCarthy with Rodgers under center. Bringing in McCarthy, it doesn't guarantee that Rodgers comes back for another season, but it does definitely increase the likelihood of him returning. So if you were hoping for, Will Howard to be the starting quarterback next year, or for them to, trade for Anthony Richardson or draft a rookie and then start him day one, I don't think they're going to be going that route. My guess is, at least for the short term, they're going to be going with a veteran quarterback of some variety. And I think plan A is to try and get Aaron Rodgers to return to Pittsburgh for one more season before he retires. And then, the third reason why they bring in McCarthy is not only for the short-term quarterback thing with Aaron Rodgers, but also the long-term development of your future franchise quarterback, because of the QB development history that Mike McCarthy has. I mean, he helped Rich Gannon, go into the second, act of his career as somebody that was not very good with his first act. And, he became a really good player and eventually an MVP with the Las Vegas Raiders. That development started under Mike McCarthy there in the 90s. Then, he goes to New Orleans, is successful there. Then he gets hired by the Packers, where he revitalizes the career of Brett Favre. And then he, develops a young Aaron Rodgers into one of the most intelligent quarterbacks we've ever seen in National Football League history, wins a Super Bowl with him, still has a really good relationship with Rodgers. And then he goes to Dallas, where he turns Dak Prescott into one of the most intelligent quarterbacks we've seen in the NFL over the last several seasons, and probably last 2 decades. Rodgers and Prescott are probably in the top 10 list of, the best mental processors among NFL quarterbacks during that span. And, Dak Prescott, by the way, and the Cowboys still run a McCarthy-esque offense in Dallas, and that's the offense that just got, George Pickens almost 1,500 yards, 9 touchdowns, and all-pro selection. So, I do think that McCarthy's offense is an upgrade compared to what the Steelers had before. I do think that this offense fits Aaron Rodgers because it requires a very intelligent quarterback to run the ship. There's a lot of downfield option routes in this offense, and in order for those to be successful, you need to have your quarterback and your wide receivers be really smart players, and they have to be on the same page. So, this is a guy that has a long track record of developing quarterback talent, and especially if you're a Will Howard fan, and if Aaron Rodgers comes back for another season, you're looking at Will Howard, learning from Aaron Rodgers and then learning from Mike McCarthy in this style of offense. And if you're hoping Will Howard develops into like a legitimate franchise quarterback down the road, this is not a terrible setup with Mike McCarthy coming in. But those are probably the 3 main reasons why the Pittsburgh Steelers decided to make this decision. And I got to say, probably my biggest question at this point is, who is he going to bring in as defensive coordinator? Because McCarthy has really depended throughout his career on having good defensive coordinator hires. I mean, you look at the Dallas Cowboys, his 5 seasons there. His first season with Mike Nolan as DC, terrible. I think they won 6 games. Then he hires Dan Quinn, who was a slam dunk defensive coordinator, and they end up winning 12 games for 3 straight seasons in a row, 3 straight playoff appearances, all that different stuff. And then in his final season, when Dan Quinn left for Washington, he hires Mike Zimmer, and that was another dud of a defensive coordinator hire. So I cannot stress enough how important the defensive coordinator hire is going to be for Mike McCarthy here, because, Obviously this defense has a lot of talent on it. Obviously this defense has a lot of money attributed to it. I think with getting an offensive-minded head coach, you're going to see a little bit of a change in philosophy where they are going to invest on the offensive side of the ball a little bit more. I think you'll see some cuts being made on the defensive side this year to certain players, and it will be different here in Pittsburgh. But I think with Mike McCarthy coming in, and hopefully he hires a good defensive coordinator, we're looking at a situation here where you have a very stable head coach who understands, the Steeler way, so to speak. He's from Pittsburgh, and this is his dream job. He's going to, come into this job every single day with passion and with love. So that's nice to know. But obviously this is an older school hire. It's the oldest hire the Steelers have ever made at head coach. It's the only offensive-minded guy they've ever hired. Like they're going in a different direction here, and they're hoping that Mike McCarthy's the guy that can come in and be the next great head coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers. Obviously, he has a lot to live up to with Chuck Noll and Bill Cowher and Mike Tomlin and all of them, being Hall of Famers or future Hall of Famers, and then all of them delivering a championship here to Pittsburgh. I'm pretty sure Mike McCarthy doesn't want his legacy in Pittsburgh to be as the only head coach in team history without winning a championship. So he's got a lot to motivate him. I do think the hire is probably better than a lot of people will say. I will say that I probably would have gone in a different direction, but I do understand why the team made the decision that they made. So I'm going to be heading over to the studio right now, guys. We're going to try to get live in about an hour around 3 p.m. Eastern time, and we'll stay live for as long as you want us to stay live. We'll take super chat questions. We'll go over defensive coordinator candidates. We'll do all that different stuff. So make sure you guys click that subscribe button. Go over to our live stream right now. Until next time, guys, here we go, Steelers.